America is falling apart. I mean, literally, 32 years of Reaganomics, and we are falling apart, and our super rich are to blame for it. There was once upon a time in this country when the super rich needed you and me and working class Americans to be successful. They needed us for their roads, for their businesses, for their communications, for their transportation, as their customers, most importantly, and for their overall success. Also, they needed us as their workers. The super rich rode on the same trains as us, flew in the same planes as us. They went to the same hospitals. They learned at our schools. Their success directly depended on us and on the well-being of the nation, and they knew it. But times have changed, and the super rich of the 21st century no longer think that you and I are needed for their continued success. You know, in a whole lot of ways, these people have just given up on America. Paul Buchheit brilliantly pointed this out, actually in a whole variety of venues. It's over at Alternet as well. As they accumulate more and more wealth, the very rich have less need for society. At the same time, they convince themselves that they made it on their own and that contributing to societal needs is unfair to them. There is ample evidence, Paul writes, that this small group of takers is giving up on the country that made it possible for them to build a huge fortune. Buchheit goes on to say, the rich have always needed the middle class to work in their factories and buy their products. With globalization, though, this is no longer true. They don't need our infrastructure for their yachts and helicopters and submarines. They pay for private schools for their kids, private security for their homes. They have private emergency rooms to avoid the healthcare hassle. All they need is an assortment of servants who might be guest workers coming to America on H-2B visas, willing to work for less than the middle-class American can afford. End of quote. And here's the really, really scary part of this. These millionaires and billionaires who've given up on America, who've given up on the working class, they're the ones who are in charge of the political process in this country. And, you know, they've brainwashed average voting Republicans into thinking that the success of working class Americans is irrelevant to the future of this country. As a result, the Republican politicians are no longer investing in America. They're no longer investing in the things that have traditionally made America and our working class successful. For example, our infrastructure. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers annual report card on America's infrastructure, it's a mess. Our roads are falling apart. Our transportation systems are in turmoil. Our energy and electrical systems are stuck back in the 1900s. Non-defense related infrastructure spending was around $325 billion a year when George W. Bush set foot inside the White House. Today it's only $235 billion a year, a $90 billion a year drop from when Bush took office. Republican politicians brainwashed by America's super rich or owned by them have repeatedly refused to fund comprehensive infrastructure spending bills, all in the name of austerity. But cutting funding to the nation's infrastructure is not the right way to address America's debt or spending problems. And cutting spending is like no way to rebuild the country, right? Oh yeah, let's rebuild the country. How? Well, you know, why don't you volunteer? Over at the Financial Times, there's an article about this. Cardiff Garcia points out, excuse me, it's also likely that much of the investment that has been foregone in the name of fiscal consolidation will have to be made eventually anyways, only it will be made when rates are higher, exacerbating the long-term fiscal outlook rather than improving it. As Think Progress points out, continued underfunding in this arena over the coming years will cost businesses $1 trillion in lost sales and cost the economy 3.5 million jobs. The Society of Civil Engineers, another group that, pardon me, has no political agenda. They say it's going to take 3.6 actually, to be precise, $1 trillion in investment by 2020, $450 billion a year, just to bring America into the 21st century and avoid risking a complete infrastructure collapse. But the super rich don't care. As long as they have their private schools, their private hospitals, their private airports, their private places. They're bleeding working class Americans dry while destroying the infrastructure of the nation that has really given them their success. I mean, no matter what Jamie Dimon or Charles Koch or Shelley Adelson tell you, America's wealthy elite did not make their fortunes on their own without a strong economy and infrastructure. America's millionaires and billionaires wouldn't be where they are today. It's really that simple. So what can we do right now to rebuild America's infrastructure and give a boost to the American economy? First, we got to bring an end to globalization. We should be protecting American jobs instead of letting the super rich ship them overseas and build factories in third world countries. But more importantly, we need to roll back the Reagan tax cuts and make sure that America's wealthy elite are paying their fair share to support our economy and infrastructure. So we've got enough money to build the infrastructure. Right now, that burden of rebuilding America, to the extent that we're doing it at, to the tune of $90 billion a year less than when Bush was president, right now the burden for paying for that is on the backs of working class Americans, and that's just wrong. It's ridiculous that working class Americans struggle to survive day to day and are paying more in taxes than billionaire banksters and oil tycoons. A lot has changed in America over the last 100 years. But one thing pretty much remains the same. For the super rich to be successful, they still need, at least for the moment, now this is changing, but they still need you and me. They need us to build their roads, to buy from their businesses, to maintain their communications, to maintain the infrastructure systems for their transportation. Our infrastructure may be crumbling. But frankly, I believe there's still time to get America back on the road to success because we're all in this together. So how do we do it? We say no to global free trade. We say no to globalization. We say, by the way, let me point out, this is the lesson that Europe is learning. I would predict that within 5 years, there will be no more euro. There'll still be a eurozone, but there won't be any more euro. Or there will be a euro, but it'll only be 4 or 5 countries. Because the euro is bankrupting a bunch of countries in Europe. Because it's like a free trade policy on steroids with the currency being regulated by basically Germany. Paul Krugman has an op-ed in today's New York Times in which he basically says, Germany's the problem with Europe. And they don't realize it. They're forcing austerity on everybody, but they won't accept it for themselves. Germany, you could say Germany has won World War II with the euro and the eurozone. And I mean, it's great that Germany is back as a country, with a small d democracy and progressive values to a large extent. But at the expense of the rest of Europe. And then in the United States, we're not back at all. We're collapsing. And, you can have Rick Perry running around all day long going, yeah, I created more jobs here in Texas than anywhere than the rest of the country combined. But, there's $7.25 an hour jobs. Really? And they're literally tearing up roads in Texas because it's cheaper to maintain dirt roads. It costs $300 a year to maintain a dirt road. It costs about $1,000 a year to maintain a paved road. Is that the direction that America should be going? I don't think so.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's time to completely repudiate Reaganomics and reverse the destruction of the last 32 years of political activity by both parties.